Have you ever wondered what underpainting is? Well, in this video, I'm going to explain exactly what it is, who it's for, the benefits of it, and if you should do it. So let's get right into it. Okay, so one side of my face is going to be for underpainting. I'm going to do all the underpaint on this side, and then on this side, you're going to see like the more traditional route, which I do all the time. There's nothing wrong with either one. And let me really make sure I make that clear. There is no right or wrong way to do this. It's going to come down to personal preference and also what look you're going for. So if you were someone who is going for a very natural look to their makeup, meaning you're not going to be able to visibly see those layers of bronzer and blush necessarily on your skin like you would in the traditional way when you put it on top of your foundation. If you really want that natural, like I just have beautiful bone structure that is like just coming through my foundation and just like lit from within. I have a little bit of blush coming through, but nothing like visibly on top of your skin, then this is for you. Now for my cream bronzer, I'm going to use one of my favorites. This is from LYS. It's the No Limits cream bronzer in the shade Harmony. So we're going to go right in. It's going to go right on top of my bare skin, but my skin, of course, is prepped with my moisturizer and my sunscreen. So this is going to go on top. Here's something I want to point out that is actually pretty important, and that is when you're doing underpainting, you want to make sure you're using a product that's pigmented enough that you're still going to see it shine through when you put your foundation on top. So for that reason, I wouldn't recommend more sheer bronzers, specifically from like Makeup by Mario, like the Soft Sculpt Transforming Skin Enhancer. This is a really sheer product. This is the kind of product or bronzer that I don't want you to use to underpaint with, because when you put your foundation on top, you're not even going to see it. It's too sheer. It's going to be washed out by that foundation. Now, the good thing about underpainting, let's talk about some pros. Some of the pros are you don't have to worry so much about the application of it. Placement, yes, but when you're blending it out, you don't have to worry about how perfect it's looking, because the beauty of it is you're going to go on top of it with some foundation, and that's going to help to minimize and like erase and hide any like blending mistakes or any application mistakes, as long as they're not too bad. For the most part, it's going to really make it look seamless and flawless. I'm going to apply this on the side of my nose, underneath it, and then let's just do a little bit on my jaw. All right, that is the underpainting placement. Everyone's going to be different. It's going to be up to you where you want to see that bone structure and where you want to contour or minimize or sculpt even more. So this is what I want to do for my skin, but it's going to be different for everyone. So feel free to tweak the placement as needed for you and your face shape. Now there's a couple different ways to do underpainting. You'll see some people do every single color that they're going to do under their makeup, meaning like their bronzer, and then they do the blush, and then you do a highlighter or a color corrector or a concealer in a more brightening shade. You'll see them do that all at once. I'm not a fan of that method. I think it's a little too overwhelming. It's a little too daunting to try to blend those three different worlds together and make them look nice underneath your makeup. So I like to do them separately. That's my tip for underpainting. And also the brush that you choose to blend out these products is going to be crucial. I recommend something with a little bit of an angle. This is gonna make it really easy and foolproof. This is a 109 brush from BK Beauty. This is gonna make it so easy and so seamless. So I'm going to take that brush, and what I like to do is start with a stippling motion and press it and work it into my skin. Now, this is also where I really don't recommend that you swipe back and forth as your blending method, because you're going to end up working that product just basically off of your skin. So I don't want to see any like aggressive blending back and forth, because you probably think you're doing the right thing by like really blending it into your skin, but you're actually not. You're blending it up and off of your skin. So you're wasting your time. So push that product in. Now it's going to look like a lot of product, and that's actually the point, because this is where you could get away with putting a highly pigmented amount of bronzer or highly pigmented bronzer underneath, because the beauty of it is it's going to look so incredibly natural when you go in and put your foundation or your tinted moisturizer on top. So I'm going to leave this side right now as is. I'm going to go and work in the forehead. Same method. I'm tightly blending this into my forehead, focusing it pretty high up, because that's where I want to see the most amount of bronzer and contour seeping through. You know, placement is going to be personal with anything to do with contouring and bronzer and blush and all those things. So these are the areas of my face that I like to apply if I'm going to do an underpainting technique, because for me, I have a bigger forehead and I like to kind of bring it down a little bit and minimize it and just make it look a little bit shorter underneath my makeup, or just in general. And then with my cheek, you know, I don't have like model cheekbones by any stretch of the imagination. So by doing an underpainting technique, it really is going to give you that bone structure. It's going to kind of lay down the foundation of the rest of your makeup to lay on top. You really are creating like that depth and that bone structure and just the structure of your face underneath your makeup. And when you put your foundation on top, it's like this natural way of kind of, you're faking it till you make it, basically. So you're giving this optical illusion of having this bone structure, like this chiseled cheek, let's just say, or like the smaller forehead, or like the cut jawline. You're giving that illusion of it underneath your makeup, and it's going to be very natural and very undetectable because it's underneath the makeup. It's not sitting on top. That's the main takeaway you're going to get from this video is underpainting is a natural, more undetectable way of wearing your cream bronzer, your contour, even your blush or your highlighter. It's the most natural way of applying those products and getting a more natural finish versus wearing them on top, because when you wear them on top, it's quite literally sitting on top of your skin. It's sitting on top of the foundation. It's a lot more visible to the eye. It's a lot more visible in person if you're face to face with someone, which is, you know, all the time, I'm assuming. So just keep that in mind. That's going to be the biggest takeaway of whether or not you choose to underpaint. So if that sounds like something that, you know, you've always wanted to do or achieve with your makeup, then underpaint is going to be a great option for you. And I'll switch to a much smaller brush to blend out the nose. Now this technique, it's funny because even if I'm working on a client or a job where I'm not trying to do an underpainting technique, even if I'm doing a full glam look, I still will always underpaint the nose, because what I like to do, carve out this little nook of the eye and sculpt this little area and then connect it to the inner part of the brow. And it looks messy at first, trust me, I know. Once you blend your concealer on top along the sides and straight down the bridge of the nose, you get the most perfect, natural looking nose contour of all time. So this is something I do regardless of if I'm doing a full face of underpainting or if I'm just going to do a full-on glam where it doesn't matter. I always do this technique on my clients' noses. And sometimes I take the time to do it on myself. Sometimes. So again, don't get caught up with the blending too much. I mean, obviously you want it to be roughly blended. You want it to be smooth looking, but don't get so hung up where like you're looking at it like with a microscope. It's going to be fine when you put your foundation on top. So now that's blended on. This is the part where if you're going to do a highlighting effect with your underpainting, this is when you want to utilize that product. For me, that product is going to be Bright Forecast from the Prep and Prime collection from MAC. This is also going to double as my color corrector and brightener under my eye. As you can see, I have a lot of discoloration and redness under my eye. So this is going to be like a magic little eraser for those visible veins, for that redness. And since it's lighter than my skin tone, quite obviously, it's also going to give me a highlighted effect. So perfect for underpainting if you're going that route. You don't have to do all of these steps. You can just utilize the bronzing aspect of underpainting and just create that bone structure. But here's the thing with makeup. When you utilize something that's a contrasting color, it's just going to bring that product out and like bring that effort out even more. So if you really want to go for it and you really want to get like the most out of your underpainting, then do a little bit of highlighting underpainting as well. To work this in, I'm just going to use a new Real Techniques brush. This is a 086 brush. It came in a set, and just blend it along the side of the nose. Again, I'm not going to worry too much about how well blended it is because this is also a very thin product. And once I get that foundation on top, it's just going to melt away. Trying to avoid this side of my face, keep it makeup free for the next demonstration. Now the highlighting is really where you want to bring out your features underneath your makeup. So just with like the bronzer where you want to kind of minimize or like push away an area of your face and really like create that shadow and that depth that you may not have. You're trying to create that optical illusion of more depth or like a more chiseled, defined area of your face. Highlighting is the opposite, where you want to put it in places that you want to bring out even more. So you want to bring back light, areas of light to the face. So in this case, I love to bring some extra light around my nose. Right here it gets really dark. Quite obviously, like I just said, I have dark circles. So this is a great tool and technique to utilize to bring some light from within underneath your makeup. So now that we did that, we're going to go into blush. Now, with underpainting with blush, you could either do a cream like this one. This is from Westmanatelier, or you could do a liquid. Either one's going to work great. I'm just going to grab my Petal blush from Westmanatelier because it's one of my favorites. And I'm just going to get right in there and swipe it onto the apple of my cheek. Taking another stippling brush, I'm going to pat this in. Same technique you saw me use earlier. I'm just pressing it, bouncing it into my skin. This is especially where you want to be careful with your blending and you don't want to over blend and overwork the product. and you don't want to blend it too much into your bronzer and then create that muddied effect with your two colors. So be very careful with your blending in this process. But that's done. Underpainting on the side is done. This is the finished effect. Before you go in with your foundation and layer that on top, this is once you have blended out all of your underpainting products, and this is the result that you should get, roughly. Now, moving on to foundation, this is the final step in the whole underpainting process. This is where you want to be very mindful of what formula you're going to put on top of your underpainting. For example, this is not where you want to go and put a full coverage foundation on top, because you're just going to cover up all of that hard work. So if you're someone who loves a full coverage foundation or needs a full coverage foundation, then underpainting is not going to be for you, because you're basically going to go in with that full coverage and it's going to cover all that hard work up. If you are someone who likes a light coverage foundation, or a light to medium, or medium being the maximum, or if you just want to use a really small amount of a medium coverage foundation, then this is going to be a great technique to utilize. So with that said, I'm going to use a medium coverage. This is the Jouer Backstage Face and Body, but I'm going to use a really small amount. The reason why I like this foundation so much, I could go on forever about it. This is also the newly reformulated one, which I love just as much as the old formulation. They did a great job of this. It's slightly more glowy than the original one, just to take note of that. But this is a great foundation because you need a tiny bit, and it really blends so easily on top of your skin. So I'm just going to pump a little bit out on my palette and take a small foundation brush. This is actually a 110 brush from BK Beauty. Now again, you want to take this into consideration as well. You don't want to go in with a huge foundation brush or anything that's too big or too wide, because you want to have some more precision when you're applying your foundation. You don't want to just go in and end up accidentally covering up all your hard work that you just spent the time doing. So take a small brush, you'll have a lot more control. Now what I like to do is start in the center of my face and work around the areas that I underpainted. I like to work around it first, deposit most of my foundation and my product in the areas that don't have the underpainting applied. And then when I get to the point where I have very minimal product on my brush, that's when I go over the areas that I've underpainted. So I'd say it's about now. I'm just gonna lightly tap over the bronzer, go straight down my forehead. And again, you're gonna see that I'm not blending back and forth. I'm not buffing it. I'm not going in a swiping motion, because that would just ruin all of that blending and all that application. What I am doing is just gently tapping it on. And you'll notice too with underpainting, another great benefit of underpainting is once you get all those products underneath and laid down first, you end up using so much less foundation than you typically would. I mean, it's shocking how little foundation you need to go over the underpainted portion of your face than you typically would need. So it's actually a really great perk to underpainting, is you end up using just so much less product. So lightly going over the cheek now. I'm going to bring this on top of the jawline to blend that into the rest of my skin. You can still see that blush peeking through. You can still see that bronzer peeking through, but in the most natural, subtle way. So underpainting, it's a lot of layers. It definitely takes a little bit of patience, because you're not just kind of slapping things on and layering them on top. You're really being mindful of the placement, the blending, all the application, and you have to have the patience to really take your time blending these products out and creating these thinner layers of foundation on top. So that is one side almost finished. Now I'm going to go back in with more concealer, as I normally would, and just go over this area under my eye, and then this side would be complete. For concealer, I'm going to use the new hauslabs Triclone Skin Tech concealer. This is the shade 21 Light Medium Neutral. This is a very full coverage concealer. So since I already have a lot of coverage coming from within with that highlighter, I'm going to use much less than I typically would, and the way you typically see me use on my channel. I am going to go in this area just a touch more where I need a little more coverage and brightness. And taking that small brush again, I'm going to tap it in to those areas. And that is one side fully done, fully underpainted, and complete. Okay, moving on. We're going to do this side in the more traditional way that you see me do all the time. And there's nothing wrong with that too. And I really want to make sure I point out, same foundation, by the way. I want to make sure I really point out that there is no right or wrong. Not one is better than the other. They're both going to look beautiful. We're not trying to find flaws in either one. I'm just trying to point out simply the difference of underpainting versus not underpainting, and then you can decide from there if it's right for you. Now here's one thing I need to point out for the more traditional side of applying your foundation and your bronzer and your blush and so forth, is you can use any amount of coverage that you want. You're not limited to a medium and less. You can do anything you want. You can do tinted moisturizer, medium, full coverage, any formula you want, you can do. So that is one benefit, is, you can wear any kind of coverage that you want or need. without worrying about covering up the underpainting. Still sticking to my Dior Backstage Face and Body just so I can have like that cohesive look. Applying it all over. So underneath my eye, just a touch, onto my jaw, onto my chin. And this is a 106 from VK Beauty, by the way. I chose a bigger brush because I'm just going in for it, and I'm just going to apply this all over in order to get it done a little bit quicker and be more efficient with my time. A bigger brush is going to get this product on and blend it on much quicker than that small brush that I used to overlap my underpainting. You could also use a sponge to get this done quick, obviously, whatever your preferred method is. Okay, so blend this on the side of my nose, above my lip. Okay, one side is done. I'm gonna let this dry down just a touch for a second and then come back and do all the other steps again. Now for this method, I'm not just gonna swipe this onto my skin. This is where I completely switch up my techniques. I don't personally like to swipe my cream products like my bronzer and my blush directly on top of my foundation. There's room for a lot of error when you do it that way. You can lift up the foundation. You could really create like a muddied effect. So instead, I like to take my brush, dip into the product, like take my brush and tap it into the product itself. Get a good amount. And then I still like to work it into the top of my hand just to make sure it's nice and blended. So when it hits my skin, I don't have to work so hard to blend it on. So once that's pre-blended, I'm gonna just take this and tap it on top of the foundation. Okay, so bronzer is on. The same thing, I'm just gonna tap this along the jawline. Just sculpting underneath. And I'm gonna switch my brush to a much smaller one. This is also from BK Beauty. It's a 205 brush. I take this same method, just dip it into the cream bronzer and then swipe this down along the side of my nose. Now we can move on to highlighting, concealing, all those things. So I'm gonna highlight first, and then I'm gonna apply my blush. Again, it's just all going on top. No right or wrong way to do this. So whatever you choose, it is a personal preference. They both end up looking beautiful in my opinion. So you can't go wrong either way. You just cannot go wrong. Same thing, same method. I'm just gonna tap this in just like I did the other side. As we're nearing the end of this comparison video, you're gonna really see that, one's gonna have definitely more impact. So like I said, this is gonna be your more natural side. If you really want like that undetectable look to your makeup, like meaning you don't look like you have a visible amount of makeup on, then you're gonna wanna underpaint for sure. If you want that look, you need to underpaint. If you love makeup, and I'm not saying if you don't love makeup, you would do underpainting. You could love makeup and do either one, doesn't matter. But if you like the impact of really seeing your highlighter and your concealer and your blush and your bronzer, and you love that impact that it gives you of layering it on top, then go for the traditional route. So it's really gonna be a personal preference. Just like anything with makeup. Makeup is personal. I'm just gonna go back over this with my foundation brush, kind of melt these together. And now we're gonna move on to blush. Same blush, we use Petal. Same application as before. I'm gonna take my brush, dip it into the product, get a good amount, pre-blend it, and just tap it on. And just layer it right on top. And again, I'm just gonna point out when you really look at these two makeup applications, you're gonna see a lot of impact on this side, but you're not getting that lit from within, that bone structure from within type look. So they're very different. Blending this on a little bit more. Then we're gonna go in with that final step, which is the concealer. Going back to my hauslabs in the shade 21. Let's do a little highlighting here. Same thing, blending on top. Really getting that high impact for sure with the full coverage concealer. Lightly blending it, just a touch. Going back to my blush brush, making sure there's no separation between the two and they just kind of blend in together. And that is two completely different makeup applications. Like completely different makeup applications. Now let's take a little step back and let's compare the two and see the overall finish that each one gives you. And that completes this video covering all the bases on how to underpaint, the pros, the cons, who it's for, who it's not for, all these things. I really hope this helped to answer any of your questions with underpainting. I have been asked so many times to do this video, so I'm so happy to bring this to you finally. If you have any other questions, feel free to leave them in the comments below. If you like this video and you found it helpful, give it a thumbs up, subscribe to my YouTube channel, and if you like videos like this, I have so many more. You can check them out right here, and I'll see you all soon. Bye.